UFC 161 ties a record that no one wants. Dana White needs his bad boys to play nice in the media, and sparks fly on the Ultimate Fighter between Ronda Rousey and Mr. and Mrs. Miesha Tate. All that and more coming up. This is MMA on Draft. This is First Run TV. You're watching MMA on Draft from Arena Sports Bar in Simi Valley, California. I'm Rich Slaton, joined by Joe Cervelin, Dawna Gonzales, and Gary T. Let's get into it. UFC 161 tied a record for the most decisions in one single event. Some people like it, some people don't, but most importantly, there were a lot of weird fights. Let's start first with my good friend Joseph Cervelin. Joe, what'd you think about UFC 161? What stood out to you?
What stood out? Well, there was a quick, exciting knockout of Pat Barry by Sean Jordan that was disappointing to me because I like Pat Barry and he's been knocked out a few times recently. He's fighting a lot of big, powerful, quick guys. He's fighting a 250-pound man that could backflip and actually land it. So
a former college football champion with LSU in 2006.
Right, that as well. So the combination of that, I would say that was probably the most exciting quick fight of the night. One of the only ones that didn't go to decision.
The only quick fight.
That might have been.
I don't know if it was necessarily the only exciting fight of the night. It was definitely the only quick fight of the night.
Right.
Okay, so one winner of the night, Sean Jordan. Dawna, any losers on the night?
You know, I got to give Big Country the big loser. We could call it karma. He did turn down 2 huge contracts and then maybe had a little bit of a fumble in something he said in the media. But Big Country took a big beating, and it was, for his fans, painful to watch. But man, I mean, the man could. You got to give it to him. The man could take a shot,
right.
And he did take a hell of a beating. But Big Country got beat.
But did he lose, or did
he got beat?
Or the other gentleman win? I still can't pronounce his name. Was it Storyarc?
Stipe Miocic.
I still can't pronounce his name, but
that guy.
I gotta say, he was great. Game plan, move to the right, stay in Big Country's right hand.
Box his face in.
Box his face in. Conditioning was there. I wouldn't say that Country lost. The guy impressed me.
No, he did. He fought his fight, and he did a great job. But any given night with Big Country in the cage, that could have been a different fight. That was not Big Country's night, and he took one of the worst beatings we've ever seen him take in the cage.
I think he just boxed him. The guy outboxed him. Big Country started waiting to smoke him with the one big right overhand to knock the guy out. It never happened.
Undoubtedly.
He outbreathed them as well.
Yeah, he got gassed, undoubtedly. But I don't know if that means that he was definitely the better fighter in the cage that night. But like I said, put Big Country in the cage any other night, it might have been a different fight.
Well, Big Country's not known for all of his preparation. This is a guy who's a very talented fighter, very tough dude. But there might be a little bit of an oversized BJ Penn attitude.
Should he go down in weight class?
Oh yes, of course he should, but he's never going to.
It's going to be difficult too. He's a big boy.
He hasn't
belly.
recently looked better than his last couple fights.
Right.
The last 3 times Big Country has gotten in the cage, he's looking a little trim. So, could he go down in weight class? Absolutely. Should he go down in weight class? We'd all love to see it because he'd be excellent at light heavyweight. I don't think it changes the fact that there were just a couple other things going on that night, and it fed into him being the biggest loser, in my opinion.
Now, it wasn't all just Roy Nelson and Stipe Miocic. It wasn't all just Sean Jordan and Pat Barry. There was also a headlining fight between Rashad Evans and Dan Henderson. Gary, you had some pretty strong opinions about that fight.
Well, actually, Henderson kind of fought like Nelson did the fight before that. Henderson is a sort of, he's got the mean right hand, and people know that it's almost like a one-sided fighter. Kind of comes in waiting to do that overhead shot, and people know that. And Rashad is just much bouncier, much quicker, left to right. He was able to, outbounce Henderson, and I think that's how he won. I gave round 2 and 3 to Evans. So, I mean, the fight ended the way it should have ended. No surprises there.
Has Rashad kicked the Blackzilians' curse? I mean, I know the Blackzilians have won since beginning, but do you think Rashad's over that hump?
I think Rashad's always going to come to the cage and fight his fight. Here's my problem, or the problem with the Henderson-Rashad matchup. It's too perfect of a matchup. You've got 2 great wrestlers who are very competent strikers, and they completely nullified each other's game. Had they gone to the ground and maybe tested each other on the ground where they neither of them are known to work, that would have been an interesting, fun fight to watch. But you match up two exact same copies, and you're going to get a fight that completely just wipes each other out. And I think that's what they did. I don't think either one of them shined in that fight because the other one nullified everything each other could do.
So with this win, what's next for Rashad? What should he do?
I think Rashad is back on track to get a belt. I think they match him up with, I don't know, Glover Teixeira. That would be a really exciting fight.
I'd see that fight.
That'd be a really exciting fight.
Should he go to 185 maybe?
No, I think he needs to stay exactly where he is. I think Rashad is really exciting at light heavyweight, and he's great for that pool of fighters.
All right, lightning round on this one. Let's play school teacher. Give it a grade A through F. UFC 161. Joe, an A, B, C, D, or F?
It was a B.
A B? A solid B?
I like UFC, so I'm not going to give it a B minus.
Okay, a solid B. Dawna Gonzales.
I give it a solid B, and can I just throw it out there that I thought the ladies put on a hell of a fight?
That was a great fight.
Absolutely,
that was
great fight.
Wonderful fight. I had no problem with it. Going to decision, we'd all love to see knockouts. We'd all love to see people go to sleep or get their arms broken. But solid fighting is what we want to watch, and I think everybody put on a solid fight that night.
I wasn't sure if I'm more impressed with Davis of her fighting ability or Rosie Sexton, who took a beating.
Absolutely.
There were triangles, there were rear nakeds, there were punches at some point. Dean Erb in the second round was like, you better start fighting, and the fight would have been finished if Davis wouldn't pump him a couple extra hard punches.
Absolutely.
So Gary, what's your grade for the event?
Oh man, my favorite fight was the Krause fight with the Canadian guy.
Oh, Stout.
Stout.
Yeah.
I like that was my favorite fight, which was the undercard. So when my favorite fight is on
Sometimes
the undercard,
the undercards have the best fight.
Yeah.
I give it a C.
You give it a C.
I give it a C, maybe
All
C
right, so we
plus.
have a B minus average from UFC 161. Next up, a lot of controversy lately coming through Dana White's inbox. Fighters taking to Twitter, taking to the airwaves, and saying some things that maybe they shouldn't say. Dawna, you had a lot to say about this.
I do. I'm not even going to go the route of let's be good human beings and not say horrible things to other human beings. Let's go from this point of view. The UFC, MMA, but specifically the UFC, is a multi-million-dollar corporation. You, as a fighter, a professional athlete, are now a product. You don't get to run around just saying whatever the hell comes out of your mouth and think it's cool. Nobody gets to say, oh, boys will be boys and meatheads will be meatheads and it's all good. No, you are a professional fighter and you need to act accordingly. And I think them putting in place the code of conduct was exactly what needed to happen. And when you go outside of that code of conduct, you need to be suspended and you need to be docked a whole bunch of money because you are a product that is being presented to the American public as you're a commodity. So act like it.
I mean, given that these guys are fighters, though, they're not. Should there be a different standard for fighters versus NBA players? Should that code of conduct
No, these are professional fighters. If we want MMA to be taken as seriously as the NBA or the NFL or any of the mainstream sports, then we need to start acting accordingly. And the fighters need to be held to those standards.
Joe, do you agree?
About which part?
Well, pick one first. The fighters need to be held to the same standards as NBA stars.
I don't know if I can answer that question. I think they have a code of conduct that they now have to sign and follow. So it's just the gray area where are they still allowed to call each other bitch or pussy, or can they not say?
Busting balls is totally different than using really inflammatory words that will incite a whole community.
Well, let's get down to brass tacks about it. You have Roy Nelson calling Daniel Cormier and Uncle Tom. You have Nick Diaz and then Nick Diaz's manager using Nate Diaz using a pretty inflammatory word for homosexuals.
Right.
I guess the inflammatory
word.
The one.
Right. There's ways to bust balls and trash talk your opponent without having to go to those specific words. Or how about inciting certain things about their skin color or, religion? There's ways to trash talk without going there.
Even with a code of conduct, I think for these type of guys, it's going to be difficult. It's going to take some time for them to really get to the level of the NBA or the NFL where they're trained. These guys are brawlers. These are the guys.
They're not brawlers. They are professional athletes.
I got it. They become professional athletes. But a lot of these guys, if you step with their foot in a bar, they're swinging away.
That is absolutely untrue.
Oh, come on.
That is absolutely untrue. Most of the guys in MMA right now have been bred to be fighters since they were 12 years old. They do jiu-jitsu, they do wrestling, they do stand-up. These are not guys that they pulled off the street. This isn't Kimbo Slice they pulled off the street. They're like, oh, let's make you a fighter.
It's not 1993.
Right.
I got
These are guys who have been bred to be professional fighters by this point. Yes, it's not at the point of the NFL, but it's on their way, and they're smart enough to know that this is not how you behave in public.
There is that whole idea of don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want.
Absolutely.
Well, how about if they start insulting each other's girlfriends or wives instead of homophobic or transphobic? I mean, that should be...
These are all things that pure professional athletes do not do. Why do you need to go after somebody's wife when if I want to trash talk you and we have a bout, how about I just talk about how you're not good and you can't beat me? Why do I need to attack your wife?
Now, what about the culture of emasculation among men, in particular, in competition? The majority of smack talk.
Fine.
But so where does that line begin? You know, Joe's making a great point about calling someone a bitch or a pussy.
Sure.
That those are words that you could say, well, those words are used in a dominating way to oppress women, and so those words make femininity something negative.
I would imagine that if there was a man that was going to fight a woman, calling her a pussy might not be the best way to go. But if it's a man fighting another man, there are just maybe some words, some red button words that we shouldn't use. And
how about throwing up the finger? I mean, would that fit in your level of conduct?
I don't think there's anything wrong with trash talking. However,
you're effing the crowd. You're throwing up your finger to the crowd, to the media.
Yeah.
Children are watching. Should that be in the conduct?
No, there should be in the code of conduct. You can't do that. I mean, look what happened anytime the UFC's on with NBC or
on Fox.
Yeah, dude, Nate Diaz, behave like the professional athlete you are. This is a multi-million-dollar sport.
It's fun. It's fun to watch. So Joe likes that. Joe loves.
Everyone likes a good wardrobe malfunction. No one was really sad that we got to see a little bit extra of Janet Jackson.
Sure.
But maybe her parents.
I mean, you know what I mean? But if I own the UFC and I know that I'm going to have to pay a huge fee because you want to act like an idiot, now I've got a problem because you are my product. We're not talking about out there in the world how everybody's allowed to act however they want to because they're allowed to do that. This is a business, so act accordingly.
Okay, so with a word like what's currently considered the new F word for homosexuals.
Sure.
With a word like that one, is the problem with that word, is the problem more for the UFC the word itself, or is it the public reaction to the word? Are we asking to hold fighters to a standard that's an ethical standard or to a professional standard, or are they the same thing?
I think it's the exact same thing. I think that there are just places that you go, places that you don't go as a professional, regardless of what you get to think inside of your own brain. If you worked for some other corporation as a professional, I don't know, computer person, you don't get to go on Twitter and just type anything that just comes into your head. You have to restrain yourself.
Computer people don't throw elbows at the office.
Correct, but this is their business. This is a business. Ask any fighter trying to get a contract with the UFC right now, and they will tell you how much of a business this is.
For a long time, the UFC has been considered the only game in town for combat sports. But as we've seen lately, a lot of other promotions and a lot of other types of combat sports are coming up. We have the rise of Metamoris most recently, and of course, Glory's Kickboxing League. Gary, what do you think is the place for these sort of single combat sports in the world of combat?
Because you have to remember that, the single sport combat, that's how MMA started. Right. Remember back in the first UFC 3-4, it was Kung Fu fighter versus the Taekwondo fighter, kickboxer versus capoeira. MMA came from single sport contact fighting, and there's total room for it. I enjoy watching K1. I enjoy watching fighters do kickboxing, and then thinking to myself, how would this fighter last the MMA? Could he knock out the top guy in UFC or Bellator? Or if the top guy in UFC Bellator came into K1 and just had K1 rules, would he get smoked? I think so. That goes for any kind of fighting. So I enjoy it. I just total room for it, and they complement each other. That's what I think.
I think they absolutely complement each other. I think that I think they feed each other and how they're going to grow, because the more the average Joe watches the UFC, the more they're going to want to understand the intricacies of each of the specialties. And so when you have something like Metamoris, you're like, oh, the ground game's really interesting. I want to watch something like that, where all these guys are doing is fighting on the ground, and these are the top guys in the sport. Then you become not just an MMA fan, but you become a jiu-jitsu fan. And vice versa. I think they absolutely feed each other.
Well, did Metamoris make a lot of jiu-jitsu fans with their last event?
Yeah, actually, I think they did. I think there were some people, but I think his point they took Brandon Schaub, a UFC fighter, and put him up against a really high-level BJJ guy, and it wasn't a good fight because Brandon was playing his game, and Cyborg was trying to play his game. But at the same time, you couldn't put Cyborg in the cage with Schaub. However, the rest of the fights, I think, were really exciting. Did you watch Kron Gracie choke out the Korean Zombie? That was some good stuff. The ladies brought it, as they always do, and I think they're watching the intricacies of a game like BJJ and learning just everything about it makes you a better MMA fan and a more informed MMA fan, which helps the sport.
Joe, what about the World Series of Fighting and these other sort of mid-market MMA promotions? Is there room for them as well?
I think it's always good to have competition. It's places for UFC is at the top right now in MMA at least, and it's places where they can pull new talent or bring talent back. And it's also places to put guys like John Fitch, I guess.
Ooh, you mean at the end of Josh Berkman's arms?
Yeah.
That might have been the most badass submission I've ever seen.
Or the worst reffing.
The worst ref.
Maybe both at the same time. That was almost a little scary.
Yeah, awesome to watch somebody get put to sleep.
Right.
But to have Mazzagatti just, hey, what's going on there? I mean, dude.
Berkman let go of him. Yeah.
Your fighter should not end the fight when he feels the other guy goes body's limp. You should end the fight for him. That's your job.
Right.
Well, I don't think that Fitch had a chance to tap in that one. I didn't see a tap coming from Fitch.
No, I didn't see it coming at all. And that's nobody's perfect, but that was just one of those moments that Berkman got up and he's like, boom. What?
But is that more that Josh Berkman's choke was badass? Because we look at Mazzagatti in the cage, we're like, well, clearly let's blame Steve Mazzagatti because he's often blameworthy. But was that one Josh Berkman just squeezed the hell out of John Fitch?
I think it was a surprise. He rocked him. He corked him up as he took him down, and I think he kind of DDT'd him like Jake the Snake Roberts style. I think his head hit the ground after. So just that trifecta.
Yeah.
I think Mazzagatti was, I'm not saying he couldn't have refed it better, but Fitch has been so durable and tough that I think he was just kind of surprised that Fitch was out.
Yeah, I
think that was part of it.
I don't think Fitch had a chance to recover from the knockdown, and so it was the perfect storm of everything that happened to put him to sleep.
What's next for Fitch, guys?
I don't think he's done in the World Series of Fighting. One loss doesn't equal an end of a career. I think that he still has plenty of fight left in him.
For sure, but he's been put out cold a couple.
I don't think he's going back to the UFC.
Fitch has been put out cold a couple times now, so my only concern is if if the jaw that he had before is gone, is his button broke, or is this going to happen to him every time now that he gets rocked real hard or caught in a good submission?
I think that's up to him because, as we know, MMA fighters are very emotional creatures. So Fitch's losses getting into his head could absolutely affect his performances, or it can go the opposite way, and you never know. You know what I mean?
Well, we're talking two different things here. There's the confidence issue and all that and how you're going to prepare, but also there's the medical issue of there's only so many times you can get rocked and come back from the dead.
Right, but he didn't get knocked out. He got put to sleep.
That was a choke. But he did he get knocked out twice before
dazed.
that, though?
Yes, but that fight wasn't a knockout. He got dazed and
But he's never been put out like that. But as far as I know,
but that's not the same thing as getting knocked out.
But Johnny Hendricks knocked him out and slid him halfway across the ring. So it's just, I don't know if that's just coincidence that happened.
Sure.
That's what I'm getting at is, did the Johnny Hendricks brutal knockout of Fitch kind of affect why he just...
Does Hendricks get the assist for Josh Berkman?
Right, exactly.
Who knows?
On some level.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from Berkman, it was a brutal choke and he might have finished him anyway, but he put him out cold, like dead.
Well,
and
that's a matter of sinking a choke in correctly. That has nothing to do with the ability of the other fighter, because if you get that choke in correctly, you're going to sleep within seconds.
It's true. The question is, did the punch set up would the punch have set the choke up as much had he not been on the receiving end of Johnny Hendricks' huge fist?
But then there's the argument, anybody can get caught at any time.
That's very true.
Did John Fitch just get caught in that moment, and then Berkman was able to capitalize on him being dazed for the choke? Yeah. Or John Fitch could absolutely be in a bad mental place, and there goes his career. It could be either one, but we'd have to see him in a couple more fights before we can answer that. And just by watching it or saying, oh, he lost, is not a good way to answer that.
Anyone can get caught, and that raises questions for many fighters. Most recently, Antonio Big Nog Nogueira Minotauro got caught in a very nice armbar from jiu-jitsu specialist Fabricio Verdum, raising questions for some people as what's next for Big Nog, and is this reaching the twilight of his career? Me personally, I think that it's not an age issue for Nogueira. I think it's an issue of difference in competition. If you look at his myriad of wins, his nearly 30-plus wins when he was before the UFC,
right.
His opponents had a win percentage of maybe about 57%, whereas the 4 losses between Frank Mir, Cain Velasquez, and Fabricio Verdum, they have a win percentage of 77%.
Right.
These are top-tier guys.
Absolutely.
I think it's more of a competition level
it's not the same losing to those 3 as opposed to losing to people that we don't know their names at this point.
The Frank Mir surprised me twice. Okay, the first one, he had a staph infection, there was a couple excuses, I bought it, but the second time when he submitted him, I was shocked. Remember, Nogueira a couple of years ago, this is the guy, never been submitted. All of a sudden he's getting submitted. With Frank Mir, who's a great fighter, especially on the ground, but I just don't think that should have happened in that kind of way. In the Verdum fight.
You're talking about the arm break?
The arm break, yeah. And in the Verdum fight, Verdum's a great fighter. I don't know.
There's arguments that Verdum has a better jiu-jitsu pedigree than Nog. It's not, I wouldn't say for sure, but there's an argument to be made for that.
It depends on who you talk to in BJJ. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's the whole,
I'm just surprised when one of the best jiu-jitsu fighters in mixed martial arts gets submitted.
But by very high level black belts, they didn't get submitted by blue belts who just started rolling.
It's not like Brendan Schaub choked out
He got submitted
Nog.
by incredibly high level black belts.
But when Frank Mir did it, I was like, no way, man.
Frank
no
Mir
way.
not only is a black belt, but he's also a very competent MMA fighter. So you know what I mean?
Frank's a high-level black belt. He's not just some guy who went to the McDojo around the corner and got a black belt.
We're not talking about dudes that just got in the cage. These are veterans who know how to work the cage and know how to work their game inside of the cage. It's not the same as losing to Brendan Schaub, who I'm a fan of, but it's not the same.
Not especially like getting submitted by Brendan Schaub.
Right.
You get hit, that's going to hurt.
Right.
How about fighters, guys, that you're watching a fight, they're, like Henderson's 42 years old. He's in great shape. He can still fight for the best of them. Can he get the title? I don't think so. Is he the stepping stone? Is he the gatekeeper?
Henderson, you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm giving as an example.
I think he's still one of the best guys.
Do you think he still has the ability to win the belt right now?
From Jones?
From Jones.
If he caught Jones, Henderson he's sort of one-dimensional on paper, but when you actually watch him perform, he's one of those old school guys that is still really good today. He hasn't evolved, but he's I don't even know how to say it.
Of course he's evolved.
He's evolved, but he's not like one of these guys that's been doing MMA from 12. He was, he's an old school guy.
Sure.
There's only a few guys that were able to come out of, real old school. But he's able to use just that one punch, or he actually had an uppercut also. He's able to basically use 2 attacks and still, fight a top guy like Rashad.
But should a
That's just fascinating to me.
But should a fighter who's at that age, who knows probably he won't win the title, should he stick around just because?
I think he should go to middleweight. I think he has no business being in light heavyweight, in my opinion.
Why?
Because people forget that in the first round of his fight with Anderson Silva, he had Anderson mounted in that fight. He was really in a good position to win that fight.
Right.
And just the fact that Anderson was able to claw his way back and then choke him out in the end.
Okay.
I think that Dan Henderson is way more competitive size-wise with the guys at middleweight.
But that's an argument for a whole lot of them.
True.
You know what I mean? And there's also the argument that a whole bunch of guys at 185 could very easily fight at light heavyweight.
But Dan Henderson's not a tall light heavyweight.
That's correct.
He's a reasonably well-sized middleweight.
He would do great at middleweight.
I think Dan Henderson knocks out Chris Weidman if they fight.
Oh, that's interesting.
How about flyweight, guys? Let's go to flyweight or bantamweight. How about Henderson loses 100
Send him to
pounds?
135?
Yeah, why not?
Set him down, give him a mighty mouse.
But he's not getting knocked out or anything. If he was getting laid out cold,
he's not getting his ass
there's
kicked.
no reason for him to retire if he wants to keep fighting.
No, he's absolutely competitive where he is right now. If he wants to go down to middleweight, that would be exciting. But we're not talking about a guy that we're like, oh, this is so horrible, we got to do something. Dan Henderson is still competitive exactly
Right.
where he is.
How about health issues? Health issues. When you get to that age of 40 years old, even if you can still fight like Couture did, health-wise, should
Again,
they use
he's not getting beat up. Chuck Liddell, it was time for him to probably retire because he was
Right.
getting just knocked out way too much. It was really sad to see him go because he was one of the faces of the sport. But that's not happening to Henderson yet. Couture retired, I believe, at 44 or 45, and that was after Machida karate kidded his front tooth out.
Well, how about BJ Penn coming back? I mean, after the layoff,
I
after
think
getting
BJ
beat.
Penn can come back.
BJ at 55. BJ just can't
BJ Penn
fight.
needs to come back at 55.
BJ can't fight big guys anymore. 5 years
Agreed.
ago, he was able to fight Machida at light heavyweight. I think he can't do that anymore.
No, he needs to be at 55.
Yeah,
That's where he's
I don't-
competitive.
Yeah, a few years ago he can do that. Like I don't know if it's an ego thing or what. He thinks he can just go to any weight class, not train as much as these other guys. If he's at 55, I think he can become champ again. I think absolutely.
Ego or, I don't want to cut.
What's that?
Ego or I don't want to cut.
Yeah, that too, for sure. I think he likes to eat. I mean, that's the real fight is diet.
Who knows what the future holds for the old guard in the UFC, but there's plenty of opportunities abound for the new guard. In particular, our two coaches for the Ultimate Fighter this season, Rowdy Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate. So far, a lot of news coming from inside the house. Dana White saying this is some of the craziest stuff he's ever seen. Most of it he thinks won't even make television. A lot of people wondering what's going on inside that house. And Gary, you have some pretty big questions.
I think it could be a ratings ploy. Let me first ask you, when Rousey was supposed to fight Kat, which I was excited to, but now since this change-up, her and Miesha fought already. She beat Miesha.
Right.
Are we really excited to watch these two fighters go at it? Because part of the
rivalry is exciting. The emotional.
I think the rivalry is
You
very
mean
like,
the cattiness in
Right.
the house
Okay.
is exciting.
Okay.
Rivalry.
I have a huge problem
The 12
with you
episodes or
using
whatever,
that
14 episodes.
word. And here's why. When Frank Mir and Frank Shamrock and
Ken
Shamrock and Frank Mir, did you call them catty? When
They were getting catty.
When Hendo and Bisbing were going at it in the house, were you like, oh, they're so catty? How come just because
Rampage and
Ronda
Rashad are so
Miesha,
catty?
They are. How come it's just because it's ladies you use the
Rashad
word
and
catty?
Jones
These are
were getting
two
catty.
Fighters
Rashad and John
who put on a
Jones.
hell of a fight. You use the word catty? Come on.
Do you think the two female coaches will do a good job coaching? Will
Yes.
it be about the coaching?
Why wouldn't they be good coaches?
Yeah, why? Just because
What
they
is the
have
reason they
vaginas
wouldn't?
that-
No, I want to hear it, Gary. Why wouldn't they be?
I'm thinking the UFC is going to promote everything about the bitchiness and the cat rather than the fighting. I think that's what it's going to turn out to
It's
be.
not cattiness. They're two fighters with a
It's rivalry. It's emotional
We haven't
conflict.
seen it. We don't know what the hell they're
It's
gonna
East
cut it.
Coast, West Coast.
We
It's
don't know
Biggie
what
and
they're gonna
Tupac.
Why is it cattiness just because they're women? Why specifically are you using the word catty?
Because I can see it happening. I can see two
No,
females
they're two
going at it.
fighters with beef.
Yeah,
This isn't a sorority house. They're two fighters with a beef.
Are you going to watch the season? Are you going to watch?
Yeah.
Of course I'm gonna watch.
Of course
this
I'm
season.
gonna
Are you
watch.
kidding me?
I don't know. I'm not.
First of all, I always watch The Ultimate Fighter because I enjoy
Right.
the show
Yeah,
because
it
the
is
fights
on
are
my
awesome.
DVR.
And secondly, Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate, and the way I've been hearing about Ronda going after Mr. Tate, Brian Caraway, Brian Just Coast Caraway. I've been hearing so much stuff coming out. Yeah, that's the nickname. Sorry, Brian.
We all agree that was really bad coaching from the corner.
I think it's hype. I think Dana's promoting it.
Of course it's hype.
That's what the fight game is. What is the fight game without hype?
I don't know.
You think he'd go, oh no, it's cool. Everybody's getting along. Smooth sailing. There's no drama.
Do you think the male fighters are gonna listen to them?
Absolutely.
If they
Not
don't, they're
because it's a
stupid.
show.
I'm sorry.
But because it's-
I'm going to tell you. Okay, I have a story for you. I was at a fight party, and there was a gentleman there who does not watch. He's not like us. He's not UFC fans on the regular. I said something about Ronda Rousey, and instead of saying what I'm a Gina fan, but instead of saying what most people would have said about Gina, oh, is that the hot chick that fights? He said, is that the chick that rips people's arms off? And I just had this moment of pride. I was like, yes, that is the chick that rips people's arms off. And it was so cool that this person who was not an MMA fan knew that Ronda was not the hot chick, but she was the person that was ripping people's arms off. So yes, I think if any of those guys in the house want to learn how to do a hell of an armbar, they will shut up and listen to what Ronda
Not to mention judo. Ronda Rousey is an Olympic bronze medalist, 3-time Pan Am gold medalist, a 4th Dan black belt in judo.
Did you
You'd
hear
be so
what,
stupid not to listen to her when it comes to grappling. Judo Jean LaBelle.
He said that she's the best ever. Why would you go in there with some kind of ego like, oh, she has a vagina, so I can't listen to her, when she might have something to teach you as a badass fighter?
Unless she's talking out of her vagina, which even then I would listen to that.
That would be interesting.
See, I'm getting beaten up here, man.
Well, when the premise is, I don't
She
think
has
that
a
these male
vagina.
fighters are going to listen to these female coaches, even though
What do
one
you
of them is an
expect
undefeated
here?
champion.
I don't know. I want to
Would
see
you,
that.
would you, if you went, would you ignore their coaching if they were your coaches?
It's not that if some of these fighters might be more experienced than the both of them, might be better fight. Just in.
Why would they be more? I'm curious.
And
Why would they be more
more
experienced?
fights under their belt.
Kat Zagano is 13-4. She's been fighting since what, like 2000?
Right, and
Not Kat Zagano, Misha
been
Tate. I
wrestling
mean,
since she could walk.
yeah, Misha Tate's I think 13-4. Been fighting for years.
But do you think some of these guys may think that Rousey is just the next Gina Carano,
No.
UFC's golden girl, and that Cyborg?
Carano was legit. Carano
Why-
was a beast.
Carano
She wasn't.
was legit.
She was pretty. She is pretty,
But they were hyped.
she's a
It's almost
fighter.
like it was based around her. You know.
Right, but I think Ronda, whatever you have to say about Ronda, some people don't like her attitude. Whatever you have to say about Ronda, Ronda is awesome for the sport because she is a hell of a fighter.
And that's the ball game, folks. Ronda Rousey's a hell of a fighter, and I'll be watching Misha Tate and Ronda Rousey go at it over the Ultimate Fighter next season. Here from Arena Sports Bar in Simi Valley, California, my name's Rich Slaton.
Joe Cervelin.
Dawna Gonzales.
Gary Teperman.
This is MMA on Draft from First Run TV.